Okay. We can see the same thing come up over and over again. But let me turn to, Senator Cardin. 2009, February, he visits with a whole bunch of congressmen, and he discusses Iran, peace process, terrorism, human rights, so forth, but then he gets to Hezbollah and terrorism. Assad says to him, Hezbollah has no specific interest in Israel besides securing Lebanon's borders and preventing threats to Lebanon's integrity, like daily violations of Lebanese airspace and so forth. He says, okay, Hezbollah is a democratically elected party. It's the biggest party in Lebanon, strongest, blah, blah. But then he says, but let's look at the big picture. He said, peace is the big picture, and it will solve everything. Assad likened the U.S.'s approach to Hezbollah to trying to patch up an old suit when a new suit was needed. Okay, so he's got the suit metaphor, he's got the book title metaphor and so forth, but he's going to come back and use these metaphors over and over again with he's trying to explain the Golan's our issue. We want peace with Israel. Okay, everybody in Washington says, no, he doesn't, he's lying, it's not true, he's a minority guy, he says that on one side of his mouth, but it's not true. He's saying it because he means it, and it is important. It's vitally important for Syria to have peace if it wants to grow its economy, if it wants to get out of these bad relations. Now, this is the dilemma. Let me just go to one other little Ali Mamlouk talks with before we get there, I'm going to talk about balance of power. The problem with Syria is, Cardin says to Assad, you cut your relations with Hezbollah and Hamas, and then we'll talk to Israel about returning the Golan. You do this first, and then we'll see if we can start up Golan. Now, of course, Assad's eyes glaze over when he hears that, because he doesn't think that's serious. He says, look, if we give up our allies and put down our guns, Israel's never going to give it back to us. And of course, Syrian officials point to the fact that Obama put pressure on Israel to stop settlements or to make peace or have dialogue with the Palestinians. And what did he get? Netanyahu outmaneuvered him completely every single time. And he figures out Netanyahu will outmaneuver him on Golan. They'll never seriously put it. And he knows. The Syrians know that Cardin and all these other guys in Congress are never going to put pressure on Israel to give back the Golan. What, to reward Syria? The enemies of Israel? This is congressionally impossible, really. He doesn't believe it. And of course, Cardin doesn't believe Assad either. They think he's a bad, evil guy. And when Cardin goes to talk to Netanyahu, Netanyahu immediately responds to him and says, if we make any agreement with Syria, they'll tear it up the next day. So there's this lack of trust. I don't know if that's an excuse or not an excuse, but there's a total lack of trust. Everybody says, you go first, you go first. The Syrians see this as a problem of balance of power. They see that Israel is so strong, we're so weak. Israel doesn't have to give up the Golan. And a big problem is because America supports Israel. And they will tell you, oh, look at the QME. Look at the official agreement, 2007, qualitative military edge, right, that Washington has written into law now and guarantees Israel, this is the official language of it, Israel's ability to counter and defeat any military threat from any state, America guarantees, coalition of states or non-state actors, while itself sustaining minimal casualties or damage. That's America's guarantee to Israel. And, of course, we spend lots of money to do that. U.S. economic sanctions on Syria, its effort to isolate Syria financially, commercially, and its work to shut down the flow of weapons to Syria and its allies are all viewed by Damascus as part of Washington's policy of tilting the scales in Israel's favor. Efforts to push Syrian influence out of Lebanon, to bring Iran to its knees by strangling it economically, are equally viewed by Damascus as preserving Israel's military supremacy in the region. Cables from Damascus to Washington routinely insist that Assad wants peace. One from April 2009. President Assad's rhetoric and his private remarks suggest he attaches a high value of U.S. involvement in peace with talks with Israel. And the DCM there, the chargé, says signaling U.S. openness to promoting a peace deal between Israel and Syria will undercut Syrian justifications for preventing violence. And he goes on to suggest that at least we pretend, basically, to have peace in order to shut the Syrians up and to keep them from doing bad things with Hezbollah and Hamas. 5 minutes, okay. Now, we can look at another cable that has a conversation between Benjamin, who is the head of counterterrorism for U.S., and Ali Mamlouk, the head of intelligence in Syria. This is a little over a year ago, a year and a half ago. They meet. Assad sends Mamlouk to this meeting. Surprise, he's not scheduled to meet with him, but because he wants to show seriousness, Minister Head of Intelligence with counterintelligence. And they were talking about al-Qaeda and intelligence sharing and Ba'athists going over the border, hunting down radicals, all this stuff. And Ali Mamlouk says to Benjamin, you've got to lift sanctions. You've got to recognize us. What that means, you've got to take us off the lists, he says. What he means is the terrorist lists. Now, of course, Syria's on all those things because they support Hezbollah and Hamas, because of Israel. And so, essentially, Ali Mamlouk is saying, we'll trade you. You close your eyes to our attempts to liberate Golan and to support Hezbollah and Hamas. And we can kill al-Qaeda for you and help you with al-Qaeda, Iraq, all these other things. We'll trade you. Benjamin turns to him and says, the Obama administration views counterterrorism as a vital concern, but it does not see counterterrorism as something that can be separated from the rest of U.S. policy or as, in fact, its sole driver. In short, he tells these guys to go fish. He says, no, Israel's more important than al-Qaeda. And we're not going to do this. And we're stalled. Israel's more important than al-Qaeda. That's where it is. Syria wants to trade al-Qaeda and intelligence sharing. You close your eyes on Hezbollah. That's where we are. And it's the conversation that happens every single time. And that's why we got nowhere, because Syria's not going to do it. It's not going to cooperate. We've got a military attaché now in Damascus, but I'm sure he's talking, I don't know what he's talking, but he's not having a very fruitful conversation. Why? Because, anyway, we know. Now, let me just shoot to the end. So where does this leave us? I could quote you a lot of Israelis, a number of Israeli officials, all of whom are agreeing that there should be peace with Syria. The top military and intelligence people in Israel have all come out, who've just retired in the last few months, have all come out and said peace with Syria is the key to not having to bomb Iran, to getting better relations. It is the place to start because it's easy, we can do it, and it won't hurt our security. Okay. So how does Syria hope to proceed? Politically, this is too much for Netanyahu or his foreign minister to do. They don't want to give up the Golan. And they think they can win. And maybe they can. Maybe they can strangle Syria. Maybe Syria will collapse economically. Maybe Iran will collapse economically too. That's the game that they're counting on. And they've got America's support with sanctions to try to starve the Syrians and the Iranians. So why shouldn't they think they can win?